Okay, we'll move to item 4, Swenson and Hagan. Give us an update on the zoning schedule.
Right, thank you, Planner Nagler with Swenson Hagen Engineering. Yeah, a few things to go over with you. As Commissioner Menson mentioned, the zoning change did get delayed a month. The state of North Dakota owns a parcel that is also being rezoned with it, that's on the complex. City was having difficulty finding somebody to sign off on zoning change. It turns out that it is owned by the Department of Corrections, just a drainage way for them. The city's gonna go ahead and acknowledge that they want the zoning change. They can do it themselves basically without having the applicant sign off on it. So that's what they're gonna do. It's not done a lot, but it's an allowable thing. So it'll be next month when we're moving forward. But that does give us a little bit of time now to review the layout that we have presented. I do have large copies here. I know it can be really difficult to read on a PDF what you're looking at. So if anybody wants a large copy, I have them here. It also gives us an opportunity to have the official pre-application meeting with the city of Bismarck. It gives us a chance to get some staff comments back. They get a look at it and just kind of give us some concerns or thoughts that they would have. So we just give you a few of their items. We're showing an east-west right away in there, which we connect on the east and on the west. There's already some of the existing access points there. The general thought from the city staff at this point is that piece right there would have to be sort of standard city paving, so it'll be a curb and gutter section of road there. They are allowing us some leeway there. There really isn't a standardized size for parcels that are entirely zoned to be public. Typically, when you have a publicly zoned lot, it's up against other residential areas, so you're defaulting to whatever that railway standard would be. In this case, it's a bit of a unique thing. At this point, we're sort of recommending hesitantly somewhere in the 40 to 44 foot wide road for that east-west road. Now that's still entirely to change in the next couple of months, but that's just sort of where our starting point is, what we're looking at. Then when you see your maps, sort of a loop that extends up to the north and comes around, there's a chance that the city would allow us to do that as a gravel section. It's not usual in the city, but this is a unique situation, like I say, since it is completely public and completely owned by the county. So we have some movement there that can happen. If everybody has a chance to see the thing, we've just rolled out just a general idea where we think your uses would fit. Some of them are existing uses, of course, but we've laid out areas for your RV parks, if that becomes an option. The equine center, any of the fairground type things. We've given you a general idea of where we think they would fit, where everything can be serviced with some central parking areas. With the parking, another unusual situation is that parking in the city of Bismarck is typically tied to a building. So you put up a structure, you have a square footage for that structure and its use, and there's a parking determined by that. Well, for a lot of these uses, there really won't be structures, particularly the RV parking, obviously, the fairgrounds, there might not be a permanent structure. So it may come down to a sort of a negotiated parking with the city, or it may come down to only the areas of parking that are required to be in there would be paved, and the rest could be gravel or grass or temporary in some way. So a lot of questions still to be answered with the city. But I think you guys now have a good month now at this point to sort of look at the drawing and give us some feedback. And then when we actually do get a chance to present the preliminary plat next month, we'll have a better idea of where we stand. I can answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
I have a question about parking.
Sure.
Since you just said it, so I wrote it down. So right now, like we have that gravel lot, so when you submit this to them, this is just like, oh, this could be what happens. It's actually like, they won't tell the county, you need to go pave that lot tomorrow, this season, because you're bringing this in, or will they?
No, that's correct. This is just speculation on what we believe could happen.
Okay.
Parking requirements and parking paving, things like that don't come down until there's a site plan much
Okay,
later on.
okay.
So,
Or if we would construct a set of bathrooms for an RV park that we don't have.
exactly, at that time, nothing really connected to the actual platting of the property.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, I have another question. So, like, this to me is like a pretty great overview, right? So if this path, which why wouldn't it pass, right? And this is just an idea, then Bismarck doesn't hold you to these concepts, right?
That's correct. The only thing that would hold us to
Is the public.
is the actual placement of the right of way.
Yes,
and the lots and easements.
and the fact that it's gonna be public
And
and
the
we're
fact
not
it's
gonna
people-
sell it to.
Exactly, the actual zoning will.
Okay.
And then selling it, that would be your call. You guys could change your minds later in a couple of years and decide you do want to sell pieces off, but for now, this is what it's tied to.
Any other questions?
So are you just asking for an up or down? Or is there anything that you need from us yet before taking it to the county?
So what I would like in the group if possible, I know Steve had emailed a copy out, like I said, large copies here, everybody can just take a copy, just review it, take a look at it, give us any comments you think you'd like to see, any changes you'd like to see, and just any input you have, we'd like to consider before we bring it back again.
Question, maybe not for you, but for Buckstop. Is that the right location for your parking that you're supposed to be expanding into?
Most of our parking is from the road going up to the Vintage Center west. And then we have so much before that cornfield.
So when
So-
you look at this, is this road right? Because you guys, multiple times you have mentioned
Yeah.
that you were, and I'm not sure if it's a gentleman's agreement or if there's a real agreement about your parking lot being able to be bigger, where like the corn, obviously when they lease the land, it ties your hands
So-
of how much you can use.
The property with Buckstop goes, they don't even show the road on here.
Yeah,
So
assume that this is the.
I'm
still-
assuming this is what they're considering the
Yeah.
road. So yeah, this is all, would be all of our parking lot right here.
Okay,
If that is the road that they're gonna take up and around.
so you would say then like this blue part is not big enough.
Our parking lot, so the property extends to. So here's our parking lot. This is right alongside the fence. There's a road that goes up here because our Vintage Center sits right here. So we have this area underneath the power lines right now. Before the cornfield, that's considered Buckstop junctions. So where that road is actually further west,
Okay,
the way it looks.
I mean, is that important up there that you would mark that it's Buckstop stuff? Or no?
It would be helpful to know where you were gonna want to, we can certainly meet
Yeah.
after, at some point, just
Yeah.
zero that in a little bit better for you.
Which I think will be gone over later in the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, for sure.
This is
We're
real
definitely gonna
preliminary right now.
start to tie this a little closer as we get down the road.
Right, because this is just zoning,
Right,
not parceling out.
yep. It's not the actual
Right,
plan.
it's coming, but it needs a little bit of time to.
Right, but my question, I guess, is where this proposed road is, because that's something you're Bismarck and you are making an agreement with Bismarck on saying, we propose this is where the road goes. Well, that's over the top of their parking. Now you mess them up and then, you're not gonna want the road there, whatever. So
I think what it
It's
looks
fine.
like is it looks like it's farther,
then under the power lines.
it's farther east.
Which is what you're asking for us to go over
Exactly.
as a group and bring forth, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Which
And
we
like,
can do.
Just, this is the right way we have shown, it's far from set in stone, it's just an idea where, the general idea where we would, a best place where we believe you should place it, but it can be moved.
Should ask Kay, she's online, if she has any questions.
Nope, I'm good.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if the committee would be so kind, the questions that you have or comments, send them to me, email them to me, and I'll take them all and I'll put them all together and get them to Landon. Rather than having a here and there and 15 come in 15 different ways. So if you'd get them to me and I'll send out a note for a date and we can get your questions in, we'll get them all answered at once.
Perfect.
Then looking then at our next meeting in March is when we'll have to make some decisions at that time because Commissioner Munson, we're looking at the 7th of April to present to the county commission. So if they would do that, just send it to me and I'll get them over to them.
My question is, what decisions? Like, isn't this just preliminary and we need Bismarck to approve it to get to public, or what are you asking? Is it more than just comment on this?
be our agreement to this concept as a committee to move it forward, because the plat will be the next step. Zoning will be at the city commission meeting in March. Then step two is the plating, and the plating then discussion goes to the city commission. So this will have to be, and we've already made one decision to go public on development of roads and utilities. And that's part of the presentation. It's gonna have to go to the county commission. So we need to leave ourselves time, as visiting with Landon and Jason. We need to leave ourselves time as it gets presented to the city or the planning board or in the city planning department for plat finalization. If there's any adjustments that need to be made, we've got that window before it goes to the city planning commission for moving the plat for it final. So there's a short window in there, so.
What do you mean by plat? That, I know that that's different than zoning. You're saying like giving up the right of way, or are you going more than that?
This is the plat. This will be the beginning of developing the plat. The utilization concepts and areas, the road right of way proposals, utilities, they've got stormwater in there. Those are the things that need to be agreed to and then moved on then to final plat approval.
So and just to add a little bit to what he's mentioning there, so. The time constraints are one thing, but the zoning is moving forward without the plat. They can run separately, that's not an issue. At this point, you know, say what you have in front of you, ignoring all the sort of the site layouts, just looking at the right of way and the lots. That will become eventually the preliminary plat. That goes to planning and zoning as well. It takes a month for review and then it goes there. Between submitting the preliminary plat and the final plat, we can move things around. It doesn't have to be absolutely locked in at that point. If we say we're like, we need to move this 100 feet another way, it's not that big of a change when there's only really 2 stretches of right of way in here. So large blocks, large lots like these, you have some time to sort of move things around.
Right. Any further discussion? Or questions? Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move down to item 5. Auditor Swankowski, review of the MVC fund.
Good afternoon. I went ahead and, like Commissioner Munson has said, we compiled all the information that we had received from the commissioner, trying to get exactly what you want, and all the information that you desire to see. We definitely worked to try to make it as digestible as possible. That sheet there, that's 60 pages now, was originally 300 and some pages, but it had a lot of information on there that wasn't streamlined. We wanted to make it streamlined so it was digestible to you guys. And then we also broke it up by individual year. So you could look at in each individual year and see, you know, at least the ending balance of everything. So I'm really here mostly for questions.
Okay, 2017. We had bottom line ending fund balance of 7.7 million. 22, it was still positive, but it was down to 630,000. In the last 2 years, it's been negative. What is the accounting explanation? Do you know?
Can you, so in 2017, which line are you looking at again?
Just bottom line. I'm just trying to figure the
7.7
understanding.
million?
Yeah, so it had it was showing a full balance, 7.7 million in 2017. And then that was drawn down between then and 22, down to 630,000. And then in 23 and in 24, it's showing negative.
So that's in reference to the budget balance. So probably what that's gonna be referring to is what was budgeted versus what was expended. And so you see here the adjusted budget line item towards the left side, and then you see the budget balance of the individual things over here. So that $142,700 doesn't reflect the balance of the account itself. it reflects the expenditures versus the budgeted, expenditures. Versus the allocated funds, versus the expenditures. So if you wanna look to see what the actual fund balance is for that, individual line item, you're gonna wanna look over like at investments. Over here, that 5.5 million, that's with the, balance of what the investments are currently. And versus the adjusted budget. So if you look on the investments, the amount budgeted. In investments was zero. And so that's why it shows as a negative over here, because it's positive. And then if you look here at the interest earnings. We show $209,800 year to date. Was $187,868, so it shows that we're $21,000 below what was budgeted. And so that's why that $142,700, that's gonna be, that's taking into consideration on the other side, adjusted budget. A lot of these line items are at zero.
Now, maybe this comes down to my not understanding the way that the ledger is set up. And I will grant you that, and I know that this obviously goes for your day. But I'm wondering. Like even these investment or interest earnings, are those negative just because they're not in the county's bank account as cash? Is that how that works?
So are you looking at, which sheet are you looking at?
Let's take 2024 sheet.
Yeah.
You got revenue, interest earnings, negative 209,000. I'm assuming parentheses is negative, just like in Excel, right?
Well, it's not negative, that's the amount that was budgeted. So basically, that's the amount of funds that can be negated from the budget. From the available funds for the budget. So the adjusted budget, that's basically what was approved for the budget for that year.
Okay. So this doesn't represent the actual fund balance then? This is just the transaction ledger, really? right?
Well, and so if you're gonna look at the fund balance, so, like I said, for instance, the interest earnings, obviously, that's not an expenditure. That's an interest earnings that was budgeted for, that was projected to receive $209,800. Now, in 2024, not all of our investments have been input into everything right now. We're still rolling over and everything, so this isn't, completely up to date as of January 1st. This is up to date as of when the last time it was updated. So it probably goes until about September or October, where all the investments are actually realized yet. And so, over here on the budgeted side, we're $21,931 below that adjusted budget. So if you look at the adjusted budget next to the range to date and then year to date, which is synonymous in this particular case, we're $21,000 below that budgeted amount for investments. And then so on down the line here, for instance, other miscellaneous revenue, $11,000 was budgeted, range to date, we actually made $18,000, so you see that $7,000 above what was budgeted. I can keep going down the line if you want, but like, for instance, Wells Fargo operating, there was $0 budgeted for that, but ended up getting the 103,000, and so that's why it shows over there. So it's a little bit, it's not self-explanatory, the sheet's not, and so if you want to know the true balance for the fund here, as far as like investments goes, is $5.5 million. That's the investment portion that's still currently in that fund. That's not a negative.
And that's the difficulty of reading this raw data, is you gotta know how to read it, because negative doesn't mean negative.
Yeah.
Chair. You got a question?
Sorry, Steve.
Mr. Chair, committee member, if you go back, took a minute to follow through this as well. Everybody's ledgers are different, it seems like, but if you go back to 2016 and just look at the face of that page, It was all one account, one Missouri Valley Complex account, all the way through. And it had an ending balance of that year of $8,825,000. If you go to 2017. It was at the Missouri Valley Complex Operating Fund was added in to this ledger. So you've got two different distinct accounts within this. One is the Missouri Valley Complex account, and if you look across at 29,645, restricted for cultural and recreation, the balance was 7,698,000, down from the 8.8 the year before. The 45210 is the operating fund for the general day-to-day operations that it broke out. So that's heat, light, utilities, contracted services, those kinds of things. So it's two different budgets. So the very bottom line, when you get down to 2982 on the bottom, it's a combination of both of those accounts. So look at them separately. There's two different things. So if you go to 2024, and you look down the line item 29,645 restricted for culture and recreation, the balance is 5,451,000, and you go down the bottom, 45,210, 142,000 is expended for operation, and that was that expense then for the year separate from the investment. So that's the way you gotta read the ledgers.
So that's an example of how when you change the way you're accounting, it looks really weird. And it can look like there's missing money.
Mr. Chair, I'm
Yes.
wondering if we could ask Auditor Sponskowski to take that reserve fund off and have that as a separate set of accounts versus the operating, because the operating side is what we budget, we input, we expend every year. You know, now the question would be, is the interest. Does the interest income get deposited in the reserve account, or does it stay in the operating fund? And I know you explained this to the commission the other day. So I think it would be good for the committee to hear where that money goes, but I think it would be important to separate them so that what you guys are trying to ask is the reserve fund. The operating fund is a completely separate account that as we grow this committee, we will increase that operating fund through the request of the board. But I don't think we need to try to separate them so that we're not confusing the two. The other thing I would like Auditor Sponskowski to kind of explain a little bit, and he did a great job explaining to me the other day. So of the reserve fund, we have X amount of dollars in bonds, in a couple or three different bonds. And then we have other monies invested in money markets. So when you're looking at the interest income, even though we may have, and I'm gonna pull a number, $4 million invested in bonds, we're not getting interest from that annually because they're not matured. The interest income that you are recognized on the sheet that he's given you is from the other little money market accounts. So I think it would be also good for Auditor Sponskowski to give us a listing of those bond balances in each one and maturity dates, so that you all have an idea of when to expect that interest or expect that income from those bonds into that fund. Not that you have it today, but I think that would be a good report to bring the next meeting.
So does the interest come back? Where does the interest go?
If you look here at 2024, for instance, interest earnings, that's gonna go into, it's gonna be accounted for in 36,110 under interest earnings. And so all that interest that we earn from that goes back into the Missouri Valley Complex fund.
Reserve fund or the operating fund?
Well, and so the operating fund it's the whole account as itself is 2982. Is all one account. That's a line item within the same account.
Okay.
So it's all within that same portion. It's just a different line item.
Right.
So the interest earnings, and that's why it says right here under interest earnings, is that's why that's where the funds are gonna be going. It's all within the same fund. It's just how those dollars are accounted for and separated from each other.
Can I ask,
So-
and I'm sorry if this is laggy, but can I ask a quick question? To see if I understand this. So taking 2024, for example, the adjusted budget under 3611 or 110, the 209.8. That's what you projected the interest earnings to be, and that we've are short of what we projected it to be by 21.9. Is that correct?
That's correct, as far as up to date when the interest was
But
accounted for.
yeah, like September, October, whatever you said.
Probably a few months behind with that,
Okay.
so.
That makes sense. And then what you're saying is that interest earnings goes into this 2982 as a general account, that there isn't a separate checking account, for example, for the actual complex funds like utilities, contracted services versus a restricted for culture and recreation. It's just one account, and this is pierced out by accounting methods, not necessarily banking methods.
Yeah, it doesn't go into a separate account. No, it all goes into the same fund.
Excellent. I'm sure we'll get there, but I'll throw this out there. Where did the money from the restricted for cultural and recreation go?
As far as like when you see it decrease from 7.6 million to 5.4 million,
Got it.
I love that question. So if you want to go under the all category here, if you received it on your computers, we can kind of get a little bit of history on that. So, and Commissioner Munson is going to be familiar with what I'm about to say. For several years, the county commission chose to use that fund to buy down property taxes. So I believe, 2 years, they took out $500,000, and 1 year they took out $1 million. I'd have to look in this, like I said, in this all category. Yes, you're gonna see it in there. And then also, so yeah, that's the main reason why those funds are down. Then also what you're gonna see here, is the $111,000 and under the 2024 summary, and you'll also see in the all category as well. That portion was transferred over to the highway department under direction of the county commission to take care of some emergency issues that they had in the early 2024. So, but that, however, that was to be taken from the revenue, the interest earnings for 2023.
Correct.
That was all interest.
That was
Yeah,
all in.
That should not have been principal, but that was,
Yep.
it affects the account as a whole, but it would have been out of interest, not principal.
So I'm gonna make a suggestion of, would it be possible to create like a flow chart? To kind of make this easier to navigate, so it's not relying, going forward at least, or compiling how you got the numbers that you got now. And then like in your bubbles for a flow chart, put those numbers in there. And then just so that it's easier to illustrate and it doesn't require accounting knowledge to understand which pieces of the pie are going and coming from different things. And then for our purposes, and for being able to illustrate to the public what's going on with these accounts. Because I think that just the way that it's presented needs to be cleaned up.
It's accounting versus normal understanding.
Yes, yeah, and that's one of the reasons I want to give this to you, because it's raw data.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that you guys had the source, not cleaned up. This is what it truly is. This is what we're seeing on our end too, so that you know. And so as far as the flow chart, this is probably something we could definitely work on. What all do you want on that flow chart? I just want to get it from you guys so I have it. To have it right.
Something that I was gonna throw out today possibly, with all of this is, what are your guys' thoughts on maybe putting together a subcommittee of 3 people to go through this and meet with Mark, have questions, get your questions answered and report back to this committee? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I'm okay with it.
So I mean, I think we could spend a lot of hours in this
Yeah.
room of meeting time going over questions and then back and forth. This could drag out for months. Where I think if we did that, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Mr. Skonkowski?
Yeah, no, if that's what you guys wanna do, we're definitely happy to accommodate. You know, it depends on what kind of information you want, however you wanna dig into it. Yeah, I'd definitely be, more than happy to help in any way we can.
Well, and getting back to how to set up the flow chart, you've seen like how state funds filter in with the bucket and that sort of thing. That's kind of what I'm thinking is, where are the buckets? What, you know, this is savings, this is investment, this is operating, stuff like that. Just literally drawing a picture.
Sure.
Make it easy. And frankly, that may help in other areas beyond this too, that sort of approach, so,
Sure, that's something we could try with.
yeah.
Can I ask another question quick?
Yes, Kay.
And I do support the whole subcommittee thing. I'm still stuck on this restricted use fund or restricted use line item. Understanding that the county commission basically can do whatever they want to do to approve the expenditures of that fund. To your knowledge, Mark, is there any written policy surrounding that restricted use fund? Question one. Question two, is there any other examples in the county's budget, to your knowledge, that mirrors this restricted use fund? Is there any other areas that have something similar?
So your first question there's nothing that I am aware of in policy that prevents the commission doing anything with these funds that they wish to do. To my knowledge, there's nothing that would restrict them, from spending it in any way they see fit. So there's that question. The next question, as far as being restricted. This particular fund is a little bit different, as far as how it functions. Now, if the commission wanted to take a ton of money out of the highway department and move that over to a different fund, they could, unless it's tied to any type of bond or any type of grant, anything like that. If it comes from taxpayer dollars, they could probably do a budget adjustment and transfer funds from there to the general fund in order to do something. But it's gonna be a lot more of a process versus with this fund, is generally at the discretion of the commission, however they want to use it.
Mark, would it be similar to the Provident Life maintenance fund? We have transferred money back and forth between Provident and the courthouse for projects. Is it similar?
It would probably be similar. Now, again, if those funds were levied in property taxes for a certain reason, there might be some restrictions on there, but as far as that particular fund goes, I believe that was all collected through rentals.
Right.
And so, yeah, it would be very similar to those particular funds, basically to be spent at the discretion of the commission.
Yep. So there is other funds that we have that are just very similar in that manner.
Very similar, they're not worded as restricted.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's where the difference is. This has the word restricted on it. It's not really restricted.
Where did that come from?
I honestly don't know where the verbiage for that particular fund came from.
So if restricted is more of a suggestion than a rule, is it possible that before the whole unified mill levies thing back 20, 30 years ago, when we had more different segregated mill levies, maybe there was a special mill for this that had to be restricted, but is no longer restricted?
That's a possibility, but I can't confirm or deny it
Just
either
a
way.
theory that popped in my head. So.
Well, it's probably related to how the land was given from the state to Burley County
Yeah,
for the Fair Association. So you had this Fair Association, which was acted separate from the county at that time. And they had the money, they levied for it, they did all those things, and then when they disbanded, whatever happened, whatever you call that, then their funds went And so my understanding is at that time, the idea was the money that, what I'm gonna call the Fair Association, I don't know if that's the correct term. That money, because we wanted to keep the fairgrounds going, we had big dreams, they put the word, that's where it came from. Is because we were gonna restrict it to saving it only for the development of that fairgrounds. Which then we sold land, the money went to the fairgrounds, because it belonged to the fairgrounds, right or wrong, because maybe probably should have just gone to the general fund, whatever. Yeah, so it has to do with what happened with with the Fair Association.
Yes, back, in the beginning, back in, 90, I think it was, when I got going, 88. Commissioner, Knifel proposed, half a mill levy for purpose of the fairgrounds. But that was to buy the property out there. And I bought the first chunk of property. And then after that, it had a sunset clause in it, so we couldn't get any more half a mill. So we kind of ran all those years without any kind of a mill levy. And it hasn't had one since, so that's where that came about.
Sure, okay, that makes sense.
Any other quick questions for Auditor Splonkowski? None?
All right,
Thank
so do you want me to put that flow chart together, or do you want to put that subcommittee together first, or?
If you've got the bandwidth, I think that it would be good if you could do a first crack at it, at least as far as where the funds sit now, just like a present snapshot type of flow chart. You don't have to go back.
So just for 2024?
Yeah, where things stand now with all, where all the balances for the various pieces of the funds.
Okay, yeah, I think we should be able to accomplish that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that, and then we could decide to have this subcommittee, then that'll give you guys something to go on. Okay,
Sound good?
thank you.
Thank you.
We need a motion for the subcommittee.
Well, unless you want to appoint it today, so it continues here, we get.
What do you guys? Let's discuss that right now. What your thoughts are on that? Only one.
I think you can see what they come up with, and we'll talk about it next meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know, I hate to kick the can, but probably even if you appoint 3 people, are you really gonna meet between, I don't know, between now and then, if you just gave me directions to do something, so.
I think that you would want to develop the expectations of the subcommittee. Cause you really don't want to have a subcommittee that just exists and we can come up with all sorts of ideas, whether you want them or not, so.
We can put that on agenda item for the next meeting. We can do that, okay. Item number 6, discussion of briefing of the county commission, April 7th meeting, 2025.
Committee members, that was placed on here, so looking at the timing of the plating, zoning and all that, and moving forward with the county commission to bring them up to date on the activities, the plat, zoning efforts. What's approved, what's in the works, also to present them our suggestion that the development roads and right of ways, we're looking at public development out there for the main utilities and everything. It'll also be a good time to just bring the county commission up to date the activities of this committee and the activities that have been held out there and kind of review what's going on. Also, when you get into the plating here, the concepts I think are important to bring to the county commission. We're looking at some new things in revitalization of the track area, the fair and festival grounds, the equestrian center, so that those groups can also begin developing their projects as well. So we're gonna need some approvals here pretty soon.
Okay.
And that's what I think Commissioner Munson was asking, is kind of the outline of how, what we present and how we're gonna do it. It's gonna take a little time. To put all that together, so keep it moving along.
Steve, could you put together a list of action items that you would, think that we need to make decisions on in the near future?
Yep. And for the 19th of March, that would be ready for that, yeah.
Perfect.
Any other discussion? Okay. If none, move on to item 7, any other business? Anybody has? Look forward. Okay, next meeting is Wednesday, March 19th, 12 o'clock noon here. Yeah, Tom Baker room. Okay. Well, it's an even motion to adjourn. Get out of here early.
I move to adjourn.
Good question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm working on the racetrack here. Anybody know any idea when they're supposed to put that sewer line in?
You can come up to the podium so everybody can hear you. Thank you.
Anybody have any idea when that sewer line's supposed to go in under the track?
I was told they were gonna start this winter, but I have not been given official. I can certainly check with the city and find out.
And then, the property on the south side there, where it's all wetlands. I can do a little homework with a couple of friends that have done work with the feds on issues like this. Cause to be honest with you, I think that needs to be cleaned up a lot. Maybe we can get some use out of it. This right now, what you said was if we take an acre, we have to return 2 acres.
The last time I asked about moving some of that back to create more parking lot, I was told if we take an acre, we gotta give to, so. That's the last information I was given.
If it's all right, I'd like to do a little homework on it.
Yeah,
And
I'm good
put some
with it.
feelers out and see if we can't get some more use out of that.
If we can get more usable land, that's better.
Because I think it's more a concern of. It's a tributary to the Missouri. But at the same time, it's just still water. And that's not good to have next to a fairground show.
Wayne's got a question.
Yeah, this sewer line, whereabouts is that coming in at on the track?
I was just told it's pretty much cutting right through underneath it.
In the middle of it?
Not quite the middle of it, it's gonna be more on the north end. So it'll actually it'll go underneath part of the BM or the Motorcross track. And then it'll come across almost the front straightaway, if you will, north side of the track.
Because we have to do work when they put that in to figure out, make sure we don't crush that thing.
They're required to return it in the exact same condition they found it. So if that track is handling race cars, has to go back to that same condition.
Okay, so if we get going on it, we're working on it, and they decide to come through, they're gonna have to return it later.
Correct.
Okay.
Do they know there's a lot of utilities buried out there?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, there's a lot of them. I'll move on with it. So,
Yep, because even the motocross track, they know exactly what has to be done to put that back exactly the way it was before they started.
Okay. No, I'll go down the path as though they're not even putting it in.
Right.
where's the sewer line headed to? Over east on that other property?
Yeah, it's going from west to east to hook up to that lift station. I think they might be putting a new lift station in over next to Expressway.
Oh, okay.
This is a much larger sewer to handle all the development east of town. Even all the way up to Walker stuff. It's all coming down through the fairgrounds.
And when are they gonna start on that?
It was supposed to be this winter. The initial thought was to do it this winter when the pond was froze. So they weren't dealing with all the water concerns. I would have assumed that would have been done by now.
That sounds like an issue, not an issue.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'll just
Thank
keep
you.
going and go,
Yep.
they're not even doing it.
Perfect.
Okay, well, we've got a motion to adjourn from Marie. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second it. Okay. See you guys, March 19th.
They know how to do this.
That
sounds.
I'm not big